Imagine you are running through a dense, muddy forest. You're chasing a wild animal, dodging low-hanging branches, tripping over
That's
roots.
pretty exhausting already.
Right. But now, imagine doing all of that while wearing ice skates made entirely out of glass.
Oh, well, that is just a terrible idea.
Exactly. It is arguably the worst footwear you could possibly choose for a woodland pursuit. But in the original unedited fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, strapping on some glass ice skates to run through the dirt is just like a standard Tuesday.
It really is. And I mean, it perfectly sets the tone for what these stories actually were before they got sanitized for modern audiences.
Yeah, because we are so used to the neat, tidy animated movies, where the rules make sense, the magic is sparkly but logical, and everyone has a very clear moral compass.
Oh, for sure. But then you step into the world of the original source material, and suddenly that neat little package is completely shredded.
It totally is. So today, we are taking you on a deep dive into an original Brothers Grimm folktale, but it's probably not one you already know.
No, it's quite obscure.
We are looking at a wild, lesser-known Low German story called the beiden Künigeskinner, or the Two King's Children.
And our mission with this specific tale is to unpack the history, the cultural backgrounds, and the downright bizarre secrets of this story. Because original folktales possess this surreal, almost dreamlike logic.
Yeah, they really blend real historical fears with just absolute chaotic comedy. I was marveling at how jam-packed this narrative is while reading through our research.
It really doesn't give you a moment to breathe.
No. We are going to encounter impossible glass tools, magical stone statues acting like wind-up toys, and a royal family with some, let's say, highly questionable problem-solving skills.
To put it mildly.
So let's jump right into the inciting incident. We start with a king's son, and this boy has a very specific, ominous prophecy hanging over his head.
Right out of the gate, we get a deadline. It is foretold that the prince will be killed by a stag when he turns 16 years old.
Which immediately sets up the tension. So he turns 16, he goes out hunting with the other huntsmen in the forest, and sure enough, he gets separated from the group.
Of course he does.
He sees this massive stag, he tries to shoot it, but he keeps missing, and the animal leads him deeper and deeper into the woods until they are completely isolated. And then the stag suddenly transforms into a tall man.
Which is a very classic shapeshifter trope, the animal leading the hero away from civilization and into the unknown.
Right. But what this man says next completely derails the standard villain playbook. It really does.
It's so funny.
The tall man's first line of dialogue isn't some grand, booming threat. He looks at the boy and basically files a customer service complaint.
He really does.
He says, finally, I've been chasing you so hard, I broke 6 pairs of glass ice skates, and I still couldn't catch you.
Just incredible.
And then he just scoops the boy up, carries him across a great body of water, and drops him at another king's castle.
Yeah, and in the original Low German text, it specifically notes gläserne Schlittschuh, which literally means glass ice skates.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I am trying to picture the most impractical athletic gear imaginable. Running through a dirt and wood forest in glass ice skates has to be the pinnacle of absurdity.
It is entirely absurd.
So why is glass suddenly being introduced here? Is there a reason the story chooses that specific material?
There is, actually, and it's a brilliant narrative device. In the context of early folktales, glass is incredibly symbolic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a luxury material, somewhat mysterious to rural populations, but more importantly, it is defined by its fragility.
Okay, that makes sense.
So by having this magical kidnapper complain about breaking glass ice skates, the storyteller is immediately signaling to you, the listener, that we have left the normal logical world. We've crossed a boundary into a realm of impossible, fragile magic.
Oh, I see. It's letting us know there are no ground rules anymore. We aren't in a world where gravity and physics apply.
Precisely. It prepares you for the absolute unreality of what's to come at this new king's castle. The authority figures in this new realm wield magic that is inherently unreasonable.
Which brings us to the first set of tests. The prince, who grows into a young man at this castle, by the way, is told by the tyrannical king that if he wants to survive, he has to pass a vigilance test.
And it's a brutal one.
Yeah, he wants to marry the king's eldest daughter, so he has to sit in her room and watch over her from 9 in the evening until 6 in the morning. and the king is going to call out to him every single hour.
And if the prince doesn't answer, he gets executed. It's a literal life or death test of endurance.
So intense.
But the story recognizes that a human can't actually survive this without help, especially an exhausted, kidnapped prince.
Right. So we get the first magical trick, and this completely blew my mind. In the princess's bedroom, there is a stone statue of St. Christopher.
Yes, the patron saint.
The princess looks at the statue and says, "When my father calls out, you answer for him." And the text says the stone statue literally nods its head.
It's such a striking image.
It nods incredibly fast, and then slower and slower until it stops, completely covering for the sleeping prince.
Let's pause and look at the history behind that specific image, because the St. Christopher statues are fascinating in this context.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
Historically, St. Christopher is the patron saint of travelers. He's the figure you pray to for protection during dangerous transitions or long journeys.
Oh, wow. So he's literally the perfect saint for a kidnapped traveler.
Exactly. Having his stone statue provide cover for this kidnapped prince is a very deliberate, comforting background detail for a 19th century listener. It's the Hintergründe, the deep cultural background.
But why is it nodding like a metronome? It feels almost mechanical, right? Like a toy?
That is actually the influence of automatons. During the era when the brothers Grimm were collecting these tales, clockwork figures and mechanical automatons were becoming these terrifying, awe-inspiring novelties.
Wait, really? Like early robots?
Sort of, yes. Blending religious iconography with the mechanical movement of a wind-up toy creates this eerie, surreal atmosphere. It bridges ancient faith with modern, unsettling technology.
That is so cool. And it successfully tricks the king. The prince survives the night. But because the king is a tyrant, he just moves the goalposts.
Naturally. Tyrants never play fair.
He says the prince did well, but now he has to watch the second daughter. And the second night, there's an even bigger stone St. Christopher statue that does the nodding.
And it just escalates from there.
Yeah. The third night, with the youngest daughter, there is the biggest statue yet. The statues do the mechanical nodding, the prince sleeps, and he survives all 3 nights.
But since the king's passive vigilance tests have failed, he realizes he has to escalate things. He shifts from psychological torment to impossible physical labor.
And he brings back that motif of impossible magic. He hands the prince a glass axe, a glass wedge, and a glass mallet.
Just the worst tools imaginable.
He tells the prince he has to cut down a giant forest between 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening.
Which is clearly designed to be a psychological breaking point.
Oh, absolutely. The prince goes to the forest, swings the glass axe once, and it instantly shatters. He hits the glass wedge with the glass mallet, and they just smash into tiny pieces like sand.
It's hopeless.
The prince just sits down in the dirt and starts crying, waiting to be executed. And honestly, who can blame him? The king's obsession with handing out fragile glass tools for heavy construction feels like, I don't know, the ultimate metaphor for a toxic boss.
That is a very apt comparison.
It's the equivalent of modern society giving you an unpaid internship and expecting you to buy a house with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The rules of the king's world are rigged so that you fail, which then justifies your punishment. But this is where we see the actual mechanisms of survival in these tales.
Right, because someone has to save him.
Yes. The youngest princess, who is the true mastermind of this entire story, comes out to the forest at midday.
She brings him food, but he's too depressed to eat. She convinces him, and then, wait, hold on. We need to stop right here. She tells him she is going to pick the lice from his hair to make him feel better. Like, she starts picking lice out of his hair as a romantic, soothing gesture. I feel like we skipped a step.
It is a bit shocking, yeah.
To modern ears, that sounds absolutely repulsive.
It does sound jarring to us today. But this is where the historical background is essential. In pre-industrial societies, grooming, and specifically picking lice, was a profound act of intimacy and care.
Intimacy. Picking bugs out of someone's head.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about hygiene. It was a way of showing deep trust. Animals groom each other to bond, and humans did the exact same thing.
Okay, I guess when you put it like that.
In old tales, when a woman picks lice from a man's hair, it is a recognized trope that signals she is offering him absolute comfort and safety. It literally calms him down enough to fall asleep in her lap.
Okay, so it's basically a medieval spa treatment. Got it. So she gets him to sleep, and once he's out of the way, she gets to work.
She takes over completely.
She takes her white handkerchief, ties a knot in it, hits the ground 3 times, and calls out, "Or Wiggers Hurrit!" which means Earthmen come out.
It's a great summoning spell.
Suddenly, a swarm of dwarves or earth spirits appears. She commands them to cut down the entire forest and stack the wood in 3 hours. They call up all the relatives, get it done, and just vanish.
Notice the contrast in the magic here. The king uses fragile, impossible glass to enforce his authority.
Oh, right.
The princess counters it with grounded, earthy magic. She literally calls upon the soil and the workers of the earth to dismantle the tyrant's impossible task.
I couldn't help but laugh reading this because she essentially uses the ultimate supernatural gig economy app.
That's a hilarious way to frame it.
I mean, she hits the ground with a handkerchief, an on-demand construction crew spawns, does an impossible job for zero pay, and she just uninstalls them. Our waggers go home.
Yeah.
And they're gone.
It's brutally efficient. But of course, completing the task doesn't satisfy the king.
Never. The prince comes back and says the forest is chopped. The king says, "Great, now dig a massive pond, clear as a mirror, filled with all kinds of fish, by tomorrow morning."
And his tool of choice this time,
A glass shovel.
which I imagine doesn't fare well against mud.
It snaps immediately. The prince sits down and cries again. The youngest princess swoops in, brings food, does the historical lice-picking routine, puts him to sleep, summons the gig economy dwarves, and they dig the pond.
And yet, the tyrant demands a third task. The escalation has to reach its peak before the protagonist can break free.
The ultimate task is to clear a mountain of thorn bushes and build a magnificent, fully furnished castle at the top. And the tools provided: a glass axe and a glass drill.
A glass drill. The absurdity is genuinely wonderful. The king isn't even trying to hide that it's a trap anymore.
Seriously, a glass drill. They shatter instantly, of course. The princess summons the Earthmen one last time, and they build a stunning castle.
But it's still not enough.
No. When they present it to the king, he still refuses. He says the prince can't marry his youngest daughter until her 2 older sisters are married first.
This is the breaking point. The king has shown that he will never concede. The rules of his world are designed to be broken by him alone.
Right, he's just playing games.
When you are trapped in a system that refuses to let you win, the only option left is to escape the system entirely.
Which brings us to a magical, absolutely hilarious prison break. The prince and the youngest princess decide to elope in the middle of the night, but the king notices they're gone and chases after them.
This sequence employs a very old folkloric motif known as the magic sleight. It is found in mythologies all over the world.
How does that work exactly?
As the heroes flee the oppressive authority figure, they use magic to change their shapes or throw obstacles behind them. It symbolizes shedding your past identity to evade the people trying to control you.
And the way this story executes it is pure comedy. The princess looks back, sees her father riding after them, and says, "I'll turn you into a thorn bush, and I'll turn myself into a rose in the middle of the bush."
It's a great disguise.
The king arrives at the spot, sees a beautiful rose, tries to pick it, gets completely shredded by the thorns, and has to go home empty-handed.
The reaction he gets from his wife when he returns is just fantastic.
The queen absolutely roasts him. She tells him, "You idiot, you should have just picked the rose, the bush would have followed."
She's so ruthless.
So the king goes back out. The princess sees him coming again. This time, she turns the prince into a church and herself into a pastor preaching a sermon.
This part is so revealing about the society at the time.
The king arrives, and instead of doing anything aggressive, he politely sits down, listens to the sermon, and goes back home.
I love this detail. Even a tyrannical king is caught up in the illusion. The societal authority of the church temporarily overrides his rage.
Oh, that makes sense.
He's conditioned to respect the sermon, so he literally forgets he's there to kidnap his daughter.
But the queen is having none of it. She scolds him again. "You should have just brought the pastor. The church would have followed."
At this point, the queen decides if she wants something done right, she has to do it herself.
She marches out into the forest to chase them down.
And this leads to what is arguably the peak absurdity of the entire tale. The princess sees the queen coming and panics. She turns the prince into a large pond and herself into a fish swimming right in the middle.
It's a classic maneuver.
The queen arrives, sees the fish, and tries to catch it, but it's too far out. So the queen gets down on her hands and knees and decides the most logical solution is to drink the entire pond just to swallow the fish.
This is a vivid visualization of absolute destructive greed. The villain's literal overconsumption is what leads to her defeat.
She just tries to drink a lake.
She is so furious, so desperate for control, that she tries to consume the entire world, the pond, just to get what she wants. And it backfires spectacularly. She drinks the
Oh.
whole pond, but she gets so incredibly sick that her body violently rejects it.
The wording in the original text is great here.
The Low German text is so incredibly blunt. Spiget den ganzen dick wir ut. She vomits the whole pond back out. I just expressed pure delight reading this.
It's so visceral.
The image of a royal queen chugging an entire body of water out of spite, only to throw it up and admit defeat, is just the funniest thing I've read in a fairy tale.
It completely deflates her authority. It's grotesque and hilarious, but more importantly, it forces her to surrender. She realizes she's been beaten by her daughter's magic and her own hubris.
She actually admits it. She says, "I see that nothing more can help." She yields, and before she leaves, she casually hands her daughter 3 magic walnuts, telling her they will help her in her greatest need.
And then she just turns around and walks home.
So they have finally escaped the insane in-laws. They are free. But the narrative structure of these historical fairy tales demands one last major hurdle.
Right? Yes. The climax hasn't been reached yet.
We can't just coast into a happy ending. We need a little self-sabotage right at the finish line. The couple reaches the prince's homeland. They are standing just outside his castle, near a village.
They're so close.
The prince says, "Stay here, my love. I will go up to the castle, get a royal carriage in attendance, and come fetch you in style."
It sounds like a solid plan. What could go wrong?
Except, when he walks through the castle doors, his mother is so overjoyed to see him that she runs up and gives him a kiss on the cheek. And instantly, he gets total amnesia.
Just completely wipes his memory.
He forgets everything that happened. He forgets the escape, the tasks, the gig economy dwarves, and he completely forgets his fiancée waiting down in the village.
This brings us to another deep-rooted historical trope. The forgotten fiancé and the amnesia kiss.
It's so frustrating. Why does a kiss do that?
This is actually a profound sociological metaphor. In folklore, a mother's kiss often represents the pull of childhood. It is a regressive force.
Oh, wow.
By kissing him, the mother conceptually pulls him back into being the dependent child he was before he left. She essentially erases his independent adult experiences and the partner he found outside the family structure.
That actually changes how I look at the whole story. It's not just a random magic spell to pad the runtime. It's a metaphor for reverting to your old life and forgetting the person who helped you grow up.
Precisely. It's about the tension between your family of origin and the family you choose.
So while he's up in the castle acting like a teenager again, our heroine is stranded in the village. Does she give up? No. She takes a menial job washing dishes at a local mill.
She just quietly works there, waiting for her moment.
And she waits for a very long time. Long enough for the queen to find a new foreign bride for the amnesiac prince and arrange a whole royal wedding.
Which is devastating, but it sets the stage for her return.
The whole town is buzzing about the new wedding. Our heroine, the dishwasher at the mill, asks the miller if she can go watch. This is when she finally cracks open the first of those 3 magic walnuts her mother gave her.
The emergency walnuts.
Inside is a breathtakingly beautiful dress. She puts it on, goes to the church, and stands right near the altar.
And her mere presence disrupts everything.
Completely upends it. The new bride sees this magnificent dress, throws a fit, and refuses to get married unless she has a dress just as beautiful.
So they track down the heroine and ask to buy it.
The heroine says, "I won't sell it for money, but I will trade it." The price. She demands to sleep outside the prince's bedroom door that night.
It is a desperate attempt to reach his subconscious, to pierce through that amnesia.
But the castle servants give the prince a sleeping draft. So all night, she is weeping on the threshold, recounting her sacrifices to a snoring prince.
It's heartbreaking.
She's saying, "I had the forest cut down for you. I had the pond dug. I had the castle built. I turned you into a thorn bush, then a church, then a pond, and you have forgotten me." And he sleeps through the entire thing.
Only the servants hear it, and they are incredibly confused.
But this establishes a pattern, and it allows for a crucial shift in power.
Right, because the next day, the same thing happens.
She cracks the second walnut, reveals an even more beautiful dress, and the false bride demands it. The heroine trades it for a second night outside the door.
But this time, the servants, who heard her heartbreaking story the first night, intervene.
Instead of giving the prince a sleeping draft, they secretly give him a waking draft.
The intervention of the common people in the castle is a fantastic detail. They recognize the injustice happening to this unknown woman, and they bypass the royal orders to help her.
It's such a great moment. The prince stays awake. He hears her weeping outside the door, listing every single impossible thing she did to save his life, and all the memories come flooding back.
The spell of childhood regression is broken.
The next morning, he goes to her, apologizes for forgetting her, and they are finally reunited. She opens the third walnut, puts on the most beautiful dress of all, and they go to the church to get married themselves.
While the false bride and the manipulative mother are banished, it is a restoration of the proper order, achieved entirely through the heroine's resilience.
Let's look at the scoreboard here for a second because I have to highlight this. The heroine is the absolute powerhouse of this story.
She really is.
She solved literally every problem. She managed the gig economy dwarves, she shapeshifted them out of danger, she handled a pawn-chugging mother, and she broke an amnesia curse through sheer willpower and a walnut wardrobe.
It's an impressive resume.
What did the prince do? He cried in the dirt, took naps, and forgot things.
The agency in this tale belongs almost entirely to the youngest princess. She possesses the knowledge, the magic, and the emotional endurance to navigate the impossible systems her father and his mother try to trap them in.
So as we wrap up this wild journey, let's take stock. We started with a kidnapper complaining about his fragile glass ice skates.
We moved to stone St. Christopher statues nodding in the dark.
We hired on-demand earthmen to chop forests with a handkerchief, watched a furious queen vomit up an entire lake, and finished with a magical nut that cured amnesia.
It really is a testament to the chaotic, brilliant imagination of the people who originally passed these stories around the fire.
Absolutely.
They reflect a world that felt unpredictable, a world where you had to be clever because the rules set by authority figures were fundamentally unfair.
It just reminds you that the next time you see a neat, tidy, animated fairy tale on a screen, you should remember the bizarre, funny, and messy roots of these historical stories. They were weird and they were wonderful.
They certainly were.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder today. We spent all this time talking about the magic, the impossible tools, and the chaos, but think about the prince.
The so-called hero.
Exactly. The hero of the story barely speaks. He just cries and sleeps while the women around him wage a literal magical war for his survival. In modern stories, we expect the hero to save the day with a sword or a speech.
That's the modern expectation, yes.
Why were our ancestors so comfortable with a hero whose only real survival skill was letting a highly competent woman do all the heavy lifting?
That is a fascinating cultural shift to think about.
Something to mull over until next time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.